Welcome to the pocket. My name is Scooter, and here for you guys today. I got my week 16 power rankings video. Man, I love making these videos, and man, you guys must love them too because the likes I've been getting on them, the views, the subscribers, it's been absolutely incredible, and I thank you guys so much for all the support. This has been really tough. First year doing YouTube, it's been challenging, but you guys have made it all worth it. So while you're at it on this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Tell me in the comments who did I get wrong, who's too high and who is too low, and subscribe if you aren't already. Now we got some movement in every single tier. Not as much near the bottom, but there is one team that moved a little bit. And there's some NFL news I want to break real quick before we get into the tier list. Michael Penix has been named the starter for the Atlanta Falcons next week. Now, we last saw the Falcons just yesterday on Monday Night Football against the Las Vegas Raiders, who were down to, I guess it's like their third or fourth string quarterback, Desmond Ridder, former Falcon. And, they did a good job of stopping him, but they only won, I think it was like 15-9 or something. And many people would have projected the Falcons to score well over 20 points in that game. But over the past couple weeks, the Falcons have been on a 4-game losing streak up until this week. And a big part of that has been Kirk Cousins. It seems like he's wearing down. He was already kind of a statue, and maybe he's a little bit more of a statue. And despite his IQ and intelligence and knowledge of the game, it just hasn't been enough. And the Falcons made the wise move to start Penix. I mean, I was watching that Raiders game, and I was thinking by the very end of it, right? I was like, if Kirk Cousins doesn't have a 14-point lead by half next week against the Giants, you guys should bench him. Well, they got ahead of it. So that's your little bit of NFL news. Now let's get into the tier list. Starting off with our first team, or really our last team, number 32, the New York Giants. As you can see, I am a Giants fan. I do cover the Giants, but this is my NFL coverage, so I get to take a bit more of a step back look at it. The Giants are 2-12. They're tied for last place, and they currently hold the second overall pick. The Raiders hold the first overall pick. Of course, the Giants are eliminated from the playoffs. They played the Ravens this week, and as you could have guessed, they got absolutely destroyed. Now, in that game, it featured the largest spread of any NFL game we've seen this season. It was Ravens minus 16.5. And in my score predictions video, I predicted the Ravens to win by 17. So I did take the over as well as the spread. Both of those hit. You could have seen this coming. Not even as just a Giants fan. This Giants team is totally demoralized. We have backups in all over the place. And we have our fourth string quarterback in, Tim Boyle, who was signed about a week or two ago to the roster. And to be honest, he looked like the best quarterback that we've had so far. Besides, Daniel Jones and some of his highs. When I mean best quarterback, I mean one of the best backups, right? Between him, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito. He didn't look too bad. So I guess there's potential for the Giants to be semi-scrappy in one of the next 3 games for the rest of the season. Giants got the Colts, the Falcons, and the Eagles to finish out the year. They play the Falcons first. They're starting Penix, so I was going to say they were vulnerable, but with Penix, I don't know so much about that anymore. So the Giants are going to remain here at 32. I do believe they're the worst team in the league. You saw even the Falcons or the Raiders with Desmond Ridder were able to compete with the Falcons. So moving on to our next team, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, who are also 2-12, also eliminated from the playoffs, also not moving in the power rankings. So I guess Desmond Ridder, that is, he didn't appear like too awful by the score. Like it looks like it was a close game. And believe me, it was, but it wasn't because Ridder was like chewing up the clock or anything. I mean, he had a nice throw to Jacoby Myers in the 2-minute drill with actually about 20 seconds left. And it got them into Hail Mary or, field goal range, but they were down 6. So, he had a moment here and there, but he was just as bad as we've remembered him being in Atlanta. I remember him. I think they were on the Falcons getting mixed up because he was on the Falcons. The Raiders were like within their own 10-yard line. They dropped back to pass. And Desmond Ridder, he's looking downfield and looks like he's going to throw a deep one down the middle. And I'm like, all right, is he going to make a play? And he throws like a post route, and I just look and it's double coverage. And, I don't know if it was Jesse Bates or who it was, but they picked it off. And I'm just like, what are you doing, man? Like, how are you making that throw? Like you got a receiver with separate, like, I don't know, man, he's just not it. But I will say they have more weapons than the Giants do. They really did have trouble getting Brock Bowers going this time, though. So maybe over the next 3 weeks, the Raiders have potential to drop below the Giants and take that last place spot. Both of these teams are essentially competing for the number one overall pick. So that's your take on the Raiders right there. Moving on to our next team, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 3-11. They're not moving, and they are, of course, eliminated from the playoffs. I guess they look better this week, right? I mean, the offense with Mac Jones didn't look too bad. The Jets' defense made him look like a Pro Bowler, which really surprised me. I mean, Mac Jones, we've seen him this year, and he didn't look nearly that good in any of the games. I mean, of course, he looked like a backup, but in this game, I mean, it was like they were moving the ball like every single possession they had. Mac Jones was evading the rush. He even had like a spin move. I can't remember if it was third down or not, but he like spun a Jets linebacker out of his shoes, and then he did the like the Rizzler face right after. He's such a meme, and he might be a future Jameis Winston with the way he played this week. But overall, the Jaguars as a team, you lost to the Jets. I mean, it is Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams going off on you, dropping a nuke on your head in the fourth quarter. That's what they're known for, and it's taken them this long to heat up, and it took them to do it against what was a 3-10 Jaguars team at the time. But if you get beat by those two, it's not too bad, especially if you're starting Mac Jones and you're already looking ahead the next season. Really not too much to say about these bottom teams. I think we know who they are at this point. Basically, none of them are even trying to win. So there you have it. Jaguars 3-11. They're going to stay at number 30. Moving on to our next team, we have the Tennessee Titans at number 29. They are 3-11, not moving. They are eliminated. I heard Will Levis's ex was at the game, and he threw for 86 yards and 3 interceptions before getting benched for Mason Rudolph, who also threw an interception. But I just thought that was pretty funny. This guy, Will Levis, is just I'm mistaken. I said Mac Jones might be the next Jameis Winston. No, Will Levis is going to be the next Jameis Winston because I'll tell you this at least about Will Levis. He's got an arm and he's athletic and he's got talent, right? I just don't think he's got the IQ, the knowledge, or the reps, I guess, to, apply the skills that he has, right? Because we've all seen the pictures pre-draft. He's super jacked guy. Obviously, we know he has a cannon. He's got all the arm talent, but just making all these stupid plays. I mean, I could forgive you if you throw a pick, throwing something into a tight window, but some of the ways that Will Levis manages to turn the ball over is just unbelievable. And the defense in this game, obviously, they versed Joe Burrow and the Bengals, but they got smoked. They did have some turnovers on defense. I believe in this game there was like 10 combined turnovers, which is pretty insane. They obviously capitalized on some of it. They scored how many points was it? They scored 27 points, which is, I mean, it is the Bengals defense, but scoring that much when you're a team that's down like them is not good. But yeah, the Titans had 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles lost, and then the Bengals had 2 fumbles and interceptions of their own. So this game was pretty crazy. It was all over the place, but the Titans did their best. They tried to hang around, but at the end of the day, they got smoked. Moving on to our next team at number 28, we have the New England Patriots. They're 3-11. They're moving down one spot, and of course, they're eliminated from the playoffs, right? They played the Cardinals this week, and they lost 30-17. The Cardinals were looking a little rough over the past couple weeks. They played the Seahawks twice, and they were no match for Mike McDonald's defense. So I thought maybe in this game, the Patriots defense would be able to contain the Cardinals offense in a similar way, but they don't have nearly the talent the Seahawks have, and they just got absolutely ran all over by James Conner. I mean, and as for the offense, the Patriots were over 6 on third down. They had an interception, 1 for 2 on fourth down. They let up 2 sacks, not too bad, but the offense was bad. And on third down, it's essentially a turnover if you don't get it. If you don't go for it on fourth either. So considering the fourth down, 1 for 2 on fourth down, and the 0 for 6 on third, they were 1 for 7 moving the sticks in critical situations. So, I mean, we kind of knew this Patriots team wasn't all that talented, and they'd have problems like this throughout the year. But it just, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I just think this team's just running out of gas. Drake May's out there. He's doing his best, and he makes some good plays. But at the end of the day, this team's, their season's over. They're 3-11, and they're just trying to get reps for the young guys and try to figure out who they are before they get into next year. Moving on to our next team at number 27, we have the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-11. They dropped down one spot. Of course, eliminated from the playoffs. Jameis, this was one of his 3 interception games. You see, I thought in this one, Jameis might have one of those 3 touchdown, 3 interception games, and they'd lose 22-20 on a failed 2-point attempt, but that didn't happen. That's not the Jameis we got this week, so that's just too bad. The Browns, they kind of sucked in this game. I mean, the Chiefs didn't allow the big plays that the Browns normally rely on with Jameis to move the ball, those crossing routes to Jerry Jeudy or like those seam routes that Jameis really likes to rifle down the field. They were double covered. And that was literally how Jameis threw some of the interceptions in this game. I mean, he would throw a seam or a post route, and there would just be a safety right there. And I'm just like, what are you doing? But that's Jameis Winston for you. He might be the highest upside backup QB in the NFL. Like if you want to use like a really good roster and just, or not a really good roster, excuse me. If you want to use a roster that's young and has a lot of potential, like maybe like the Browns offense, I get Jerry Judy's not like a rookie, right? But he's bounced around a little bit since he's gotten drafted. And, there's some other guys there like Jerome Ford and David Njoku's finally breaking out. But you understand what I'm saying. You can use some of these weapons with Jameis Winston. Whereas if you're the Giants per se and you're using Tim Boyle, like, yeah, Malik Neighbors caught a touchdown this week, but it really wasn't like an impact, right? We were already losing and the Ravens had their backups in. So that's the difference between Jameis and these other guys. But as for the Browns as a team, I mean, they're a borderline like, bottom feeder at this point. Jameis hasn't had one of those good games in a while. So it's looking like it for the Cleveland Browns. Moving on to our next team, number 26, the New Orleans Saints. At 5-9, they're moving up 2 spots. I mean, this is our first team that's climbed so far. They are still kind of cooked because they don't have Derek Carr, but this is the best bad team in the NFL right now because they are still trying to win games. I mean, they really pushed the Commanders in this one to the very end, but I'm just wondering why they started. I believe his name is Jake Haener over Spencer Rattler. No offense to him as a person or a player or anything, but Spencer Rattler was a rookie with a lot of upside, and I'd figure if you're probably going to move on from Derek Carr, wouldn't you want to see as much Spencer Rattler as you can before next year? I mean, I understand he's made some rookie mistakes, but he's a rookie, right? And he's not on a great team, so I would get him in there, and I would keep him in there for the rest of the season. I don't know why they wasted time starting Haener. I mean, like I said, I'm happy for the guy to get his opportunity, but at the end of the day, I think Rattler deserved it a little bit more. So that's a little bit of a questionable decision, but they're probably going to have a new coach. So the defense got a lot of pressure on Jaden Daniels in this game, but Jaden Daniels is amazing. He was able to escape, here and there, and when he did, he would make big plays, right, to Terry McLaurin. That was a backbreaker for this Saints team. Kamara, for the Saints offense, he had a sick one-handed catch for a touchdown in the second half when they were starting to come back. So for what it's worth, this Saints team is still fighting, right? So they are sort of maintaining that culture that they have. But as I stated before, much like many of the other teams beneath them, their season is essentially over. Moving on again to number 25, the Carolina Panthers, who are 3-11, my highest ranked 3-11 team. But they're dropping 3 spots and, of course, eliminated from the playoffs. Finally, they were like still eligible at 3-10. It was crazy. But they had a pretty disappointing loss this week. I mean, 30-10. Bryce Young could not escape this Cowboys defensive line for the life of him. I mean, it's one thing if you're small like Bryce Young, but when you got these fast edge rushers like Parsons, it's just like, what are you supposed to do as a quarterback to get away from a guy like that, right? I mean, he fumbled early in this game, and I believe it was in scoring position, right? They were on the Cowboys side of the field, or at least by the 50. And from that point forward, it was like there was no looking back for this Cowboys team. I mean, they just proceeded to roll this Panthers team. They're using CeeDee Lamb. The Panthers couldn't stop him. The Panthers did get a big play from Bryce Young. I believe it's Jalen Coker. I believe he's a rookie undrafted wide receiver, or he's just an undrafted guy. He's been having a good year, so good for him. The Panthers do have young offensive players that they are getting involved, and they're starting to figure out who they are, which is great for them. But in terms of this game, very disappointing. This Cowboys team, I understand they've been able to win games against good opponents, but I personally believe if you show up ready to play this team, you should win. If you practice to not get into that game script where, they can tee off on the pass, much like I always explain they did against the Giants. That's what they did in this game to the Panthers, and they shouldn't have let themselves get into that script because this is the outcome. Moving on to our next team, we have the New York Jets. Now, the New York Jets are 4-10. They're moving up one spot, but they are eliminated from the playoffs, of course. But they did win, right? They finally got a win. I've been banking on them winning games all year. Probably the team I've gotten the most wrong out of any team this season. So they did win, but they did make Mac Jones look like a Pro Bowler. I mean, Mac Jones is built like, your average dad on a Thanksgiving day going out and balling out in a Thanksgiving football game with his kids. And he was pulling out spin moves. Like, what is up with this Jets defense, right? They have all this talent. I get Salah's gone, and maybe they're just not trying this year, but I don't understand how you let that happen. But Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers finally cooking. Devontae has 373 yards in just 3 weeks between them, so Rodgers and him are finally on pace. I, to this day, hold that if Devontae Adams was there at the start of the season, this would look a lot different, but we'll never know, I guess. But in the end of the day, the defense for this Jets team led up 25 to Mac Jones, who was leading a 3-10 Jaguars team going into this game. Like I said, making big plays and scrambling. I mean, they didn't even have Evan Ingram in this game, so very disappointing win for the Jets. But they did win, and the Panthers dropped so much that I just had to put them above. Moving on to our next team. At number 23, we have the Chicago Bears, who are 4-10 now. They're not moving. They're eliminated. But I thought they would do better in this game on offense specifically. I predicted 20-26. So I thought they would barely cover the spread with like a garbage time touchdown. The way I saw it was like Vikings 26-13. And then the Bears get the ball back with like 2 minutes or 3 minutes and they go score. But it's like pretty much the end of the game, right? But that almost happened in this game. I believe it was 27-12. And the Bears had the ball. They could not score. Vikings get a field goal and game over 30-12. So all I'm trying to say is I guess there's a universe where I wasn't too far off. But let's talk about what happened in this game. I mean, as I said, I thought it would be closer than this, but a big reason why it wasn't was because the Bears were 1 for 12 on third down, and they were 1 for 3 on fourth down. So 2 for 15 converting on downs in critical situations. With a guy like Caleb Williams, I mean, I understand the offensive line is not good. Brian Flores is throwing confusing looks at you, but you didn't get more than one of those third downs. I mean, you still have great weapons. You got DJ Moore, you got Romo Dunze, and you got Keenan Allen, and you're telling me you only got one of those third downs? I mean, I really can't believe it. So something's a little fishy to me about that. I kind of have a little trouble believing the offensive line is that bad, but hey, I've made excuses for worse quarterbacks, so of course I'm going to give them a pass. But this 4-10 record for the Bears genuinely does shock me. They've lost 8 straight. It's been a terrible season for them. I guess they're looking forward to next year. They got a lot of work to do. Moving on to our next team at number 22, we got the Dallas Cowboys at 6-8 without Dak Prescott. To me, that's pretty wild. I mean, they're moving up 2 spots. They were underdogs in this game against the Panthers. I bet that looks silly in hindsight. But in the end of the day, this team is still battling, right? 3 in a row is what they're going to have to win to have a shot at the playoffs. Like I said, they're still battling for that. And who are they going to play, right? How are their chances looking? Well, they play the Buccaneers, the Eagles, and the Commanders, who they did beat. But that is a really tough 3-game stretch. I mean, to be honest, though, it's pretty amusing as a Giants fan to see that, that this Cowboys team is still fighting. I almost admire it that they have their backup quarterback in there and they still got 6 wins. I mean, I think maybe 3 or 4 of those were before Dak got injured. So they pulled off a couple wins with their backup. And like I said, they're still fighting. But in reality, if they're clawing their way back and you underestimate a team like this, like I said, talking about the Panthers, they're going to pounce on you. They're going to get a lead. And if your team is flawed in any way on offense, then they're going to expose it, right? If you have a bad offensive line, they're going to get a bunch of sacks. If you have bad wide receivers, their corners are not going to fall for their routes and they're going to jump those passes, right? So this Cowboys team, I guess their defense is basically unaffected, right, by Dak Prescott outside of, what Dak does on offense, taking away the ball. What I mean is like, the defense gets more of a break when Dak is out there, but the defense is, yeah, I mean, over the past couple of years, it's been known as pretty good. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised to see that they're still playing well, even without Dak on the field. Cowboys, number 22. Now moving on. This is where things are going to start to get interesting. At number 21, we have the Indianapolis Colts, who are now 6-8 after losing to the Broncos this week in a crucial loss. Man, this one really stings. I mean, they're staying put because I think I have them in a spot that does truly reflect who they are. A team in this range has got some upside, right? You're still technically like a playoff hopeful, but you've got problems if you're at the all the way at the bottom of this tier. Now, in the first quarter and the first maybe call it 20 minutes of the game, the Colts were looking pretty good. I mean, they were holding the Broncos offense, getting that zone coverage going, and then they were running the ball. Anthony Richardson, he was moving on the ground, and then JT, he broke off what looked like a 30 or 40-yard touchdown run, but he did the flick touchback. He flicked it away. He dropped the ball before he crossed the plane. For me, I mean, I was never an offensive player until college, and then even then, I wasn't good enough to get even into a position to score or be breaking away to the point that I can even think about doing something like that. But if I were ever running for a touchdown, are you telling me you're not tucking that ball high and tight and waiting until you cross that goal line and then chucking it at the referee or whatever you're going to do with it, but you're not waiting to make sure you score? What is the style or fanciness to dropping it right as you score? Oh my God, it drives me crazy. Not because of the way it looks. It's cooler, I guess, or whatever, right? It looks kind of slick, but think about the potential consequences. I mean, you could be 7-7 right now, and you could have just dealt a loss to the Broncos and made them 8-6, right? And that would have really, brought down the teams that are in those wild card spots for the AFC and really increased your chances. You would have jumped the Dolphins, you would have jumped the Bengals. You would have been the next team. I mean, I cannot believe it. And JT is one of my favorite players. So this just drives me crazy. And you know what? You know what happened after this? The Broncos rolled them for the rest of the game because they caught a break and then they took advantage and they capitalized, right? Because then the Colts defense is going, "Oh my God, we were just out there and we should have been up now." But now they're going to have a chance to go tie the game, and at that point, it was just over, right? You killed the confidence. And like I said, I love JT to death, but man, you are so much better than that. So now that's two guys that I remember distinctly. Malachi Corley, the Jets are lucky they won that game versus the Texans, and now the Colts in an even more crucial situation. Jonathan Taylor. I'm not going to blame it all on him. This is a team sport, right? But I'm just saying, easily avoidable mistakes like that, that is something that you can look at and say, that cost us the game, right? To an extent. Now, of course, there was a whole half where the defense got rolled and whatever. So I'm not saying the whole game is JT's fault. Absolutely not. But their offense not keeping up, that's on you. That was an opportunity you needed to score on. Really too bad for the Colts. Too bad for JT. It is what it is. They're still technically alive, so they have a chance to redeem themselves. To our next team. At number 20, we have the Miami Dolphins, who are not eliminated from the playoffs at 6-8, basically tied with the Colts, but they're moving down 2 spots right above the Colts. Tua, man, this game was pretty crazy. I mean, it was crazy like I thought it would be, but it was not the high-scoring game I thought it would be. You see, this Texans defense, I get coming off the bye. I guess it could be different, but they've been known to let up some big explosive plays. And if they were to go up against any team in the NFL and I were to think, okay, who's going to like catch this defense off guard and really surprise them? I would not say the Titans like it was a few weeks ago. I would say the Dolphins, right? You got Tyreek Waddle, Achane, and now Jonnu Smith is getting in there. Malik Washington, the rookie. They got guys all over the place who can make you miss and score long, explosive touchdowns. But in this game, the Dolphins only scored 12 points. Now, why? Like, how is that even possible? Well, he must have gotten sacked a bunch, right? Well, no, not really. I mean, they did have 5 sacks, right? But in a game with this many turnovers, that's not even that crazy. I mean, Tua threw, I'm pretty sure it was 3 interceptions in this game. Let me double check for you real quick. Yeah, Tua threw 3 picks, and he didn't even break 200 yards passing. 40 attempts. Now, I get some of those are dump offs to Achan and whatnot, but I just can't believe he didn't capitalize on this defense. I mean, they scored 6 points in the second quarter and 6 points in the third. I'll guarantee you in the first and fourth quarter he threw an interception. I'm pretty sure he did. So Tua, I mean, he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, and this is just what you worry about when you pay these quarterbacks, right? I mean, I gave respect to Tua. I used to really think he wasn't good. And I saw what the Dolphins offense looked like without him, and I said, okay, maybe he's a little better than I thought. And I see a game like this when you get to the end of the season, and I start to think maybe I was right. I mean, Tua's like, he's got a lot of ability to throw with anticipation, but this is all stuff you can teach, man. I mean, Tua's really hard worker. Obviously, he's got some skill. He's in the NFL, right? But he's not the most talented quarterback. But he's been able to run this offense. But you just run into games like this every once in a while, and they were in Houston, right? You can't say it was a cold weather game, and I'm pretty sure that's a dome. So what's the excuse this time for Tua? I mean, it's just a really disappointing game. I like the Dolphins. I think they're a fun team, but in the reality, this is just what they are, right? They're just going to collapse against teams that are above 500 or in the cold. Now they got a second narrative that that narrative's been there. They can't beat good teams, but yeah, too bad for the Dolphins. They're dropping 2 spots. Team at number 19, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who are now 7-7. It seems like a while that they've had a win, and they barely scrape it out against the Raiders this week. And to be honest, I would have moved them down, probably below the Dolphins, but you know what? The reason I was going to move him down is because Cousins was still going to be starting. So they're actually moving up 1 this week because they decided to start Michael Penix this upcoming week against the Giants. And you know what? What a great warm-up game for him. Like, seriously. He's going to be able to get comfortable, get some nice explosive passes in there, but also just kind of get used to the rhythm of the offense, figure out what he really likes to do in the game, in the NFL, right? So I'm going to move them up reluctantly 1 spot. They're still at 19, right? So they're in a very unproven area of like a playoff hopeful. This is really likely starting a rookie quarterback 3 weeks before the playoffs and saying, go get ready. Go get ready to compete with some of the NFL's best. But this is what I would have done, right? I mean, I'm not an NFL coach. You might think this is kind of a crazy thing to do, but to be honest, Cousins was a statue out there. I mean, putting up 15 points against this Raiders team with everything you have on this Falcons offense. I mean, you got a good offensive line. We've said it 100 times. You got Pitts, London, Bijan. You got Mooney now, and then Ray McLeod as a slot wide receiver. I mean, you got everything you need, but he just couldn't get it done. So, I love Kirk to death, man, but this was long overdue. Maybe they'll get a little bit of a spark with Penix in there, and he'll have a nice chance to warm up next week against the Giants. So our next team at number 18, we have the San Francisco 49ers. They are 6-8, and they're dropping 3 spots. To me, this is just more a little bit about the Bengals climbing. I wouldn't have moved them down this much, but I do think the Bengals are a little better than them. Spoiler alert, you can see the list right there, or I don't know if it's mirrored. But yeah, this 49ers team, they lost a game that they very badly needed to win against the Rams at home in hard conditions. I mean, it was pouring Thursday night. And they had the lead going into the fourth quarter, 6-3. But they allowed the Rams to go ahead and kick 3 field goals over the span of the fourth quarter and do absolutely nothing about it. I mean, the Rams, they ran the ball despite Dre Greenlaw coming back. I mean, I don't think he finished the game, but despite him coming back, they still allowed like 150 rushing yards to this Rams team. And whoever rushed for more yards in a game with hard conditions is probably going to win. So that's what happened here. I mean, if this 49ers team, I get the Rams are a good offense too, but if you can't outrun someone, then you're just not who your identity says you are. So I think the 49ers are a little lost. Obviously, they're 6-8. It's not even like they're that unhealthy anymore. I get they don't have CMC or like their first or their next two running backs, but that never really was the biggest part of it, right? I mean, obviously CMC is a big help, but once you get down to like Jordan Mason, Patrick Taylor, Garendo, like those guys are pretty interchangeable, right? Uh, you know, Elijah Mitchell, guys like that in years past we've seen produce in this offense. So it's just I'm just not that convinced by the 49ers anymore. I think they're out of gas, right? They might still try to win for the rest of the year, but it's pretty much looking over for them. I guess they still do technically have a chance though, so we'll just have to see. Moving on to our next team, we have the Cincinnati Bengals at number 17. They are 6-8. They're moving up 2 spots. This is a weird one. I guess they're still in there. I view them as the best. I mean, they got to be the best 6-8 team. They got to be the best sub 500 team. I mean, they got Joe Burrow and Chase. I get the defense is so bad, right? But with Burrow and Chase, I mean, we're seeing it right now with Josh Allen. That if you have the right combination on offense, if your defense can just get like a turnover or something like that, if you play clean on offense, then you can win games like that, right? Now the problem is the Bengals did not play clean this game. They had 4 turnovers, and that was against the Titans, who are bad, right? So hence the number 17 ranking. But I still am putting respect on their name. Like I said, highest ranked sub 500 team. So there you have it. Number 17, Cincinnati Bengals. We have the Arizona Cardinals at number 16, staying put 7-7. Now they did win this week against the New England Patriots. It was 30-14, if I'm remembering correctly. 30-17, right? So they won handedly. They ran the ball really well with James Conner, and Kyler Murray made some good plays. The defense obviously back on track, but I got to see more, right? Winning a game versus the Patriots is not going to convince me to move you out of the playoff hopefuls tier. Not to mention, the Seahawks are 8-6. They're a game ahead of you, and I'll get to them in a second. The 49ers, right? I would say probably a more talented team, but a game behind you. And when you go ahead and you look, they're playing the Panthers, the Rams, and then the 49ers. So, yeah, you got a game that you should win against the Panthers, but you're playing the Rams and the 49ers. So, of course, if you win those 2 games, you're basically elevating yourself to the playoffs. But those teams they're in the same spot as you. They need to win to get in too. They need to win to also win the division. So you're kind of screwed right now if you're the Cardinals, right? Because you're a game behind the Rams and you're a game ahead of the 49ers. And I believe the Rams play the 49ers. So this is just going to be a really strange outcome in this division, isn't it? But like I said, I just got to see more against better competition. You verse the Panthers next week, so we're going to have to wait until week 17 until I really get a chance to properly evaluate and move this Cardinals team. Moving on to our next team at number 15, we have the Seattle Seahawks at 8-6, dropping 4 spots. Why? Why are they dropping 4 spots? I mean, they lost to the Packers. Packers are a great team. Well, Geno Smith appeared to sustain a knee injury. And as of right now, I am not aware of what the status is of his injury. But they have to start Sam Howell, who they acquired this offseason to replace Drew Lock. And in this game, he did not look ready to play. But we'll see. We've seen Sam Howell sort of be a bit of a Jameis Winston last year in Washington, so that's why he got picked up, right? He's got potential, and we even saw a guy like Geno Smith go to Seattle, formerly a backup, and kind of cement himself as a starter. And I'm not saying he's going to take Geno's job, but what I am saying is that there's an opportunity for him to, sort of keep the boat afloat and try to get them into the playoffs. I mean, if he wins one of the next 2 games, then you're going to be 9-8, and that's, potentially in there. But if he wins 2 games, right, then he's really in there. But in order to do that, he's going to have to win at least one divisional game. So we'll see about it. I mean, in reality, they could fall a lot further than this, right? I mean, they could be down with the Dolphins and the Colts as like a playoff hopeful as like, your season's pretty much over, right? But I'm giving them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because the defense has been so good. They played the Packers, right? So that obviously our offense is very good. So I'm not going to knock them too much for it, but they just had to go down. I mean, your quarterback gets hurt. I don't know if he's playing, so I put him right there, just barely ahead of the Cardinals. Moving on to our next team, at number 14, we have the Washington Commanders at 9-5. They're not moving. Why? Well, they had sort of an ugly win against a team in the New Orleans Saints who were starting a backup quarterback. But what I do have to say about this is they did win, number 1. But number 2, Jaden Daniels, I'm fairly confident should win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Despite what might happen in the playoffs, right? Is Bo Nix going to win a playoff game? Is Jaden Daniels going to? Are they both going to get eliminated? Both teams have the same record, but you look at the plays that Jaden Daniels was making in this game, and it was absolutely incredible. Did you know he got sacked 8 times in this game and they won? How? How do you do that? Any game that the Giants or most other teams get sacked 8 times, you're probably losing. But the thing is when Jaden Daniels was able to get away, right? Create so much separation from the pass rushers who were just chasing him, he was able to find Terry McLaurin in the end zone for a touchdown on an absolutely amazing. It was like the sea of hands when Terry caught it. But you know what? Scary Terry is just like that. I might be a Giants fan, but I'll never forget when Terry McLaurin became Scary Terry week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was like the beginning of the Carson Wentz downfall. But quick recap on my respect for Terry McLaurin. But Jaden Daniels was just, he basically put the team on his back in this game offensively to win the game. I mean, Brian Robinson didn't have that great of a game, but they did have 137 rushing yards. So that was between him, that being Jaden Daniels with 66, 65 for Brian Robinson. Jaden Daniels had 2 passing touchdowns and no turnovers. But Terry was a beast. He had 2 touchdowns, 7 for 73. That's what you want to see, right? If you're a Commanders fan, you want to see Terry, Jaden, and Brian Robinson and the rest of the team just doing their assignments. Commanders stay at 14. Moving on, at number 13, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are now 8-6 after suffering a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, they're dropping 2 spots. It was a really disappointing loss for them. They actually had the lead going into half. I believe it was 17-13. But when the Buccaneers came out of halftime, they scored 27 unanswered points and won 40-17. What a turnaround. You might be wondering, how does something like that happen? Well, the Chargers stopped doing what they do best. I mean, you can look at the obvious and say, Mike Evans absolutely torched them in the second half, which he did. Evans' stat line was 9 for 159 and 2 touchdowns, and those 2 touchdowns were long touchdowns. But it wasn't just Evans. It was this Buccaneers running game. I mean, Bucky Irving, one of the best picks for fantasy, right? But just as a rookie, coming in behind a guy like Rachaad White, who last year was second in the NFL in touches, right? Whether it was a carry or a reception. And Bucky has 117 yards on 15 carries, 7.8 yards per rush. Rachaad White is 64 yards on 15 carries. Sean Tucker got in there, 7 carries for 17 yards. And then Baker had 2 rushes himself for 25 yards. So between these 4, let's just call it 3 guys, Baker scrambles are what they are, but they had 37 carries on the ground. And they passed the ball 27 times. Only 5 incompletions for Baker, one of them being an interception. But other than that, he had 4 touchdowns. So this Buccaneers team just absolutely rolled the Chargers. This Chargers team is supposed to be predicated on defense, discipline, tackling, and all that stuff. But the Bucs are sort of like we got you with a better guy team, right? Bucky Irving, he's really elusive. You might have the right defense, but he's going to juke your guy out. Mike Evans, you might have a man assigned to cover him, but he is 6'5", and he can get separation down the field. So you better not just say, hey, we're trusting you to do your football assignment and we all got to play perfect. No, sometimes you just got to double someone, right? I mean, Jalen McMillan had a good game too himself. I believe he had 2 touchdowns in this game. No, he had 1 touchdown, but he had 5 for 75. So he made some big plays. Rachaad White caught the last touchdown. But how do you just get rolled by this Buccaneers offense so easily when all year you've been like this great defense? Well, I mean, they were averaging 13 points allowed on defense, mostly because they hadn't played quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield yet. They hadn't played quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson yet. And I said in my power rankings that I didn't want to move them up that much because they hadn't been tested. Well, this is not one of the toughest tests you can get. I mean, I didn't knock them too hard when they lost to the Ravens, but after this, I'm like, I'm not really buying what you're selling anymore. So Chargers are going to move down 2 spots to 13, 8-6, could slip out of the playoffs. Moving on to our next team, we have the Denver Broncos, who are actually going to stay put. I originally had them written as moving up to 11, but I'm going to keep them where they're at 12, just ahead of the Chargers, because I sort of have the same questions about both these teams, but I am a little bit more confident in the Broncos, which is surprising. The Chargers have Justin Herbert, right? And they have a great coach in Jim Harbaugh, but you know what? Those two aren't. Jim Harbaugh is not giving the plays to Justin Herbert. Jim Harbaugh is like a CEO, defense, culture kind of coach, kind of like John Harbaugh is. But Justin Herbert, of course he's got talent, right? But he's got issues of his own. But Bo Nix, him and Sean Payton, the head coach, are on the same page. And you could see it in this game. It was a little tough for them to get the offense going at first. The Colts almost jumped out and took a big lead, but Jonathan Taylor basically threw the ball away as he was about to score, and it counted as a touchback. Broncos got the ball back, and they didn't look back after that moment. I believe they ended up finishing this game winning 30-13, if I'm remembering that correctly. But yeah, I mean, they did catch a little bit of a break, 31-13. They did catch a little bit of a break with the Jonathan Taylor thing, but at the end of the day, I mean, they had a bad quarter, they had a bad half. But all in all, I wouldn't say this is exactly what I expected them to do. I mean, this is pretty impressive to compete against a team that's just as desperate as you are to get into the playoffs. Well, probably even more desperate, and to get in a bad situation like that where it's 13-7 at halftime, and then 13-10 going into the fourth quarter, but then you score 21 in the fourth quarter and put it away. That's just what you need from your team. That's how you finish a game, and that's what I don't see from the Chargers. The Chargers, as soon as it started getting out of hand, they were out of it. But the Broncos, it was worrisome for 3 quarters, but they still managed to make the plays they needed to make to go win the game. So I'm going to have them stay put, but I would have moved them up if it weren't for our next team, number 12, my biggest riser, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are now 8-6, are moving up 5 spots to number 11. It might actually even be more than that, because if I check my last week's power rankings, because the way I have this done is I have it written in my notes, and then I write down how much each team climbed and whatnot. But if I go ahead and I go back and look, then I can see in my week 15 power rankings, I had the Buccaneers at 17. So since I actually have them at 11, they actually climbed 6 spots. So I'm giving a lot of praise to them. I really am. But let me tell you why. It's because they've been here before. Well, I've seen the Bucks prove me wrong before. When I have doubts, I've seen them prove me wrong about those doubts, right? Going and demolishing the Eagles in the wild card round, playing the Detroit Lions close in the playoffs, right? Pretty close. And then this year, they're the only team besides the Bills who have beaten the Lions. And I would say the Bucks offense looks just as good, if not better, even though they don't have Godwin. They look really good right now. And obviously this Chargers team, perhaps their defense was a little bit overrated and their corners couldn't handle guys like Evans, but the way they were able to run the ball, man, is that going to come in handy in the playoffs? I mean, having 3 running backs that you can rotate between, Tucker, Rachaad White, and Bucky Irving, they all got different skill sets. Baker knows how to use every single one of them. I mean, this is a really good-looking team right here. You go into halftime with a deficit and you score 27 unanswered. I mean, what were the halftime adjustments? I mean, like I said, they might miss Godwin, but they clearly have other places they can go with the 3 running backs. I mean, Jalen McMillan is starting to look really good over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, Harbaugh gave Baker enough opportunities to test his defense, and Baker didn't think twice about it. He took those shots, and other than that, they ran the ball and just dominated the whole second half of this game. And rounding out my playoff contenders tier, we got 2 teams left. And at number 10, we're going to start off with the Houston Texans, who are 9-5. They're going to drop 1 spot. Now, you could argue whether or not they deserve to drop below the team that's ahead of them, but I'm just still not really impressed by the offense, especially coming off of a bye. The defense certainly met the challenge, right? And they forced 3 interceptions. They forced a fumble. They got 4 sacks and 12 points allowed. In the end of the day, that's really good. But their offense, with those turnovers, only scored 20 points. And I get this Dolphins defense has been pretty decent over the past couple weeks, especially since Tua has been back. But I don't know. I mean, this offensive line isn't able to protect CJ Stroud. They were turning the ball over themselves. I mean, there was a snap that Stroud wasn't ready for, and I guess this happens, but it just hit him in the face and just a free turnover for the other team. I mean, you can't have that kind of stuff at this point in the season, right? If that happens week 1, it's one thing, but you've been doing this for months and months now, and you're going to tell me you're not ready for a snap? It's just really unfortunate. Losing a little bit of confidence in the Texans. Another week we're mixing. Not really sure where he was, but I guess Nico Collins still had 2 touchdowns. So as long as they got him and Stroud on the same page, they got a chance to score some points. And then finally, finishing our playoff contenders tier, we have my second biggest riser this week, the Los Angeles Rams, who are 8-6, moving up 4 spots. Now, a little bit of this is spilling over from last week's win over the Bills, right? Because I wasn't sure if the Bills were collapsing or if the Rams were getting really good. Well, now we've seen the Bills beat the Lions. So we know the Bills, despite their defense not being good, are certainly still very legit. But, see the tier list. But like I said, the Texans didn't look great, and just kind of looking at what's been happening the past 2 weeks, not just this week. I mean, the Rams barely won, right? But it was a bad conditions game. They ran the ball all over them, though, right? And they won the turnover battle. So they're starting to play clean, disciplined football, and it's going to win them these close games. And you know what? I definitely trust more so than I was saying about the Buccaneers, where they've been here. Like, this Rams team they've been here, right, for a while, right? I have a lot of faith in McVay, Stafford. Now Puka and Cup are healthy, and Kyron's out there too. I mean, this is getting a little scary, right? I'm not gonna say they're in the Super Bowl hopefuls tier yet, but you see, I have them right there. I think they can beat a lot of great teams, a lot of these top 8 teams. Obviously, we just saw it 2 weeks ago. They can fall to a team like this Rams team. So just saying, we should get a little bit worried about them. It looks like they're going to have this NFC West locked up, and if they're in the playoffs, just like last year, they'll play it close, and they could take out anybody. Pretty crazy showing from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And number 8, I'm keeping them here just for, I promise, it's just one more week. The Minnesota Vikings are now 2-12, and I have them at 8. Are you crazy? Maybe a little bit, but I'm keeping them here. I mean, it's just another win against an inferior opponent, but you know what? It was a dominant one. So it's kind of hard to knock them. I mean, as I stated before, talking about the Bears, this Vikings defense held them to 2 for 15 on critical downs, that being 3rd and 4th down. I believe the Bears were able to convert 1 4th down and 1 3rd down out of 12. Oh my God. What an absolute stunning performance from this defense. The offense wasn't like incredible, but they capitalized on their opportunities. 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals. You'll take that any day of the week. Now, as far as this team goes for competing against the better teams, we have seen them play close. Obviously, they only have 2 losses, that being the Lions and that being the Lions and the Rams. So another little bit of added context to this Rams team is they have beaten elite teams. I know we're talking about the Vikings right now, but they have beaten some of these elite Super Bowl hopeful teams, right? They've beaten the Bills. They've beaten the Vikings. Obviously, the 49ers aren't a Super Bowl contender this year, but they're beating good teams like that as well. They're healthy now. They look like a completely different team. But yes, this Vikings team did what I expected them to do for the most part, and then some. So I could have moved them up, but I think I'm just going to keep them here for one more week because the rest of their schedule Not next week, actually 2 weeks. They versus the Packers, and then they versus the Lions. I've been waiting for these two games all year for this Vikings team. I mean, I've been saying the next time the Packers get them, whether it's week 17 or it's the playoffs, I just feel like they're gonna get them when it matters because of Jordan Love over Sam Darnold, right? Playoff experience is everything and all that. And then same thing with the Lions. It's like I just have a little bit more faith in those two teams to go far in the playoffs. But this Vikings team right now, yep, they look elite. I can't take anything away from them, that's for sure. Moving on to our next team at number 7. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers dropping one spot after they lost this week to the Philadelphia Eagles. Steelers are now 10-4, and the Ravens are going to be threatening them for the division. Now, they didn't have Pickens this week, so that seemed to really hurt the offense. They were in position, actually, to get back into this game. But they threw a pitch play to Najee Harris on the Eagles side of the field, and he fumbled. Eagles got the ball, and that pretty much spoiled any hope of that. Why? Because the Eagles were able to literally run the ball and do such a long drive all the way down the field and take pretty much all the rest of the time off the clock in the fourth quarter. I believe there was 10 minutes left or something. They pretty much chewed up all of it. And their defense did all right against the Eagles offense. But you know what? The Eagles did what they wanted to do. They controlled the trenches. So, I don't know. I was pretty high on this Steelers team because I thought with the way their offense is constructed with Arthur Smith, the running game, the versatile weapons that Smith coaches up, and then the defense, right? To have a stout defense and an offense that's built like that, I thought they'd be able to control the trenches with the best of them. But clearly, there are 2 or 3 teams that are just a tier above them. I'll just say it now, is the Eagles, the Lions, and the Bills have controlled the line of scrimmage better than any of the other teams in the NFL this year, besides, I guess, I would say the Chiefs. I guess you got to throw them in there. But I thought this Steelers team was on par with that. Maybe they are, because I would say, actually, the Eagles' offensive line probably – I'll say the Lions' offensive line is the best because I think the Eagles have a better QB running back combo to complement that run game, and it just creates a little bit more of the gaps, right? But I would say, the Lions' offensive line is slightly better, right? But, more for the run blocking, right? But this Steelers team, they just really disappointing loss. I thought they were going to win. I was saying why are the Eagles 5.5-point favorites? Well, they won by 2 scores, so I guess I was really way off at that one. Steelers aren't going to get my faith to rise above this spot until they get another statement win, whether it be now or in the playoffs. Moving on to our number 6 team, we have the Green Bay Packers, who are now 10-4. They're moving up 1 spot. I would have thought about moving them up a little bit more, but the Ravens are sitting there sturdy at 5. So in this week, they played the Seahawks, and for a good while there, they were rolling them, and I was getting ready to come on here and boast about them, but then Geno Smith got injured. So they played Sam Howell for the rest of the game, and obviously he wasn't able to come back and win against the Packers. Packers had a 3-score lead by halftime, I believe it was, in this game, and I think I believe it was 10 of their first 11 touches in this game were to Josh Jacobs. I love to see it. It's finally happening. I predicted this Packers team to go to the Super Bowl this year. Now, I did say they versus the Jets, so we could just forget about the AFC part. I'm back to reality over there. But this Packers team, they're getting healthy and they're getting hot at the right time. And the teams that were looking really healthy and hot, the Lions, they're not looking so healthy anymore, right? And this Eagles team, although they did have an impressive win, they're getting a little banged up themselves. So this Packers team, I'm telling you guys, they have everything they need to go win a Super Bowl. Jacobs, like I said, he was an absolute monster. He's the heartbeat of the offense. They were only 5 for 12 on third down, though, which, really isn't that great. But up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter is what you want to see. And then their defense. Like I said, they did play Sam Howell, but 7 sacks. They forced 6 punts, 2 interceptions, 1 from each guy. 30 points on offense, another steady win from the Pack. They move up 1 spot because the Steelers fell. So there you go. Packers at 6, just knocking on the window of that Super Bowl favorite. And now, rounding out our Super Bowl hopefuls tier at number 5, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who are 9-5. My highest ranked 9-5 team, my highest ranked single digit win team. They're staying put. They played the Giants this week. They did what me and pretty much everyone else expected them to do. They covered a 17 or 16 and a half point spread, absolutely dominating them. They actually beat them by 21 points. So if you have bet an alternate, you were probably pretty happy. I guess this is a good time to just point out the season that Lamar is having: 3,600 passing yards, 34 passing touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. On the ground, he's got 750 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He's probably got like 7 yards per carry, too. So when you combine those two, he's got 4,350 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Might be one of the most efficient seasons of all time. And this isn't even mentioning how he doesn't get rushing touchdowns the way Josh Allen does. In fact, it's quite the opposite, or the way Jalen Hurts does either. Instead of Jalen Hurts stealing touchdowns from Saquon Barkley, Lamar doesn't steal touchdowns from Henry. Henry steals touchdowns from Lamar. So just to think that Lamar could have 45-ish touchdowns by this point in the season is just scary. So a little bit of a boast fest about Lamar, but on the flip side, Lamar does this where he's got like a 5 touchdown game versus the Giants, and then he loses a game to the Steelers because he scores 16 points. So Lamar needs to find sort of a middle ground. It seems like, in this Giants game, he only took off 6 times, I believe it was, whether it was a designed run or a scramble. He threw 5 touchdowns, and they were all like long touchdown passes. He had time in the pocket. He was able to sit there, read the defense, and make the open throw, right? Because the Giants sold out to stop the run. Well, in the games where teams sell out to stop the run and they can actually cover a little bit, Lamar doesn't look quite as good, or he takes off, right? And it's just like Lamar's got, we're going to run read option. I'm not saying he's calling the plays, but if you are calling the plays for Lamar, it's run read option, run a play action pass, or just run it up the gut with Henry, right? And if you're running one of those play action passes or just like gun, right? You're trying to, in all of these plays, except for just handing it up the gut to Henry, Lamar has the option to take the ball, right? If it's a read option, he can take the ball. If he's passing the ball from the gun, once the pass rush gets past him, he can go take off. If it's a play action pass and he rolls out, he can take off. So I'm not saying, Lamar's, it's so difficult being Lamar Jackson, but it seems almost like it kind of is, because it seems like he almost could take off in any situation, but there's more upside in throwing the ball. So I just think, because I don't even know what the right answer is, right? I don't know how Lamar should be playing, but it just seems like he can't quite get it right, or the Ravens can't quite get it right. And I'm explaining all this because that's why they are not a Super Bowl favorite, because I'm not sure they're definitely not getting the 1 seed. And I'm not sure that for 3 games in a row, Lamar is going to be able to do that, right? Because we'll have a game like this, but he plays I don't think he plays the Steelers. Maybe he plays the Steelers one more time, but you understand where I'm going with this is if he drops one or he plays a team like the Steelers that'll control the line of scrimmage, then it gets ugly really fast. So I would love to put them in the Super Bowl hopefuls tier, but I just want to see him beat a team that's not the Giants, right? All right, can we all agree on that? Okay. And finally, moving on to our Super Bowl favorites tier, starting it off at number 4, we have the Kansas City Chiefs dropping 2 spots. Scooter, they won this week. What are you doing? What are you talking about? What do you mean they're dropping 2 spots? It's the Chiefs. Well, since you were unaware, Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain in this game, and he's now considered week to week. Now, we have seen him play before. I believe it was in the Super Bowl, actually, against the Eagles on a bummed ankle. But I would assume the adrenaline, they gave him some, compound V or something, and he just kept going. But like I said, we've seen him play with it before, like something like this. He's got some ankle sprains in the past. They'll tape it up. Will be a little gimpy, but I just want to see what he looks like. I want him to prove that he can go play with it, or he's going to sit out a week and then, come back with 2 weeks left in the season. So we'll see, but I had to knock them down, right? Because even if he plays, he's not going to be 100%, right? So you're not going to be full effectiveness. And believe me, they had to be full effectiveness to be ranked ahead of the next 3 teams. So there you have that. But on the bright side, the defense did do their job. They had 4 interceptions. They got 5 sacks. They had held the Browns to 4 for 12 on third down. So the team is going to desperately need D-Hop and Kelsey to step up once Mahomes is in the playoffs, because he's not going to be 100%. And it seems like they're not going to get that. Well, they actually are still in line for the 1 seed, but they need to keep that 1 seed now because they want that extra week for Mahomes to get healthy. So, we'll see. They definitely have potential to move up very quickly before the end of the regular season. But right now, I'm going to keep them at 4 as a little sneaky team. But just saying, if Mahomes plays this week and he looks fine, the next team is at the next 2 teams are at desperate risk to get jumped by them. At number 3, at 12-2, moving up 1 spot ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs for the time being, we have the Philadelphia Eagles coming off a win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 27-13. Now, I actually thought the Steelers would win this game. I thought the spread was ridiculous, yada, yada, yada. Well, it turns out I was wrong. It happens. But in this game, the Eagles, I get the Steelers didn't have Pickens, but they dominated this Steelers team. The Eagles had over 400 total yards. The Steelers had about 180. The Steelers had 4 yards per play. Eagles had 5.2. First downs, the Steelers were 3 for 10 on third down, and they only had 10 first downs this whole game. The Eagles were 10 for 17 on third down. What an efficiency. And they had 26 first downs. Holy time of possession. Total plays, Steelers 41. The Eagles had 77. Sacks allowed. Steelers only allowed 2 sacks, but the Eagles did allow 3. Ooh. But you know what? They only punted once. Steelers punted 5 times. Penalties sort of canceled each other out. The Eagles did lose 2 fumbles. So that was a little scary. You thought, oh man, this is how the Steelers are going to win. They're going to win the turnover battle. No. You know why? Like I said, time of possession. The Eagles had the ball twice as much as the Steelers did this game. And what do you know? They basically doubled their points. 20 minutes and 8 seconds for the Steelers compared to 39 minutes and 52 seconds. That's basically 20 minutes to 40 minutes. So this Steelers defense got worn out. Their offense, the Steelers offense was lethargic without Pickens. They couldn't do anything. It looked like last year. This Eagles team is great. Like I said, the Steelers didn't have Pickens, so they couldn't really get some of those big plays they normally look for. But man, what a dominating win. I didn't see it coming. I'm going to be totally honest. So although I said the Chiefs are, at serious risk for passing the Eagles, it's not because I'm down on the Eagles, believe me. It's just because I'm so high on the Chiefs. And to be honest, the Eagles have an opportunity to jump the next team in this tier list. They really do. I could see my number 4 team becoming my number 2 team and my number 2 team becoming my 4 team. Like it's swapping the following week. But very impressed by the Eagles. The Eagles chewed up like 10 minutes of clock after Najee Harris fumbled, down 27-13. Steelers were trying to score, and that's how you go finish a football game. So as much as I hate the Eagles, the way that they play football is the way that I like football. So I kind of hate them a little bit extra because they're doing something that I love and I can't root for it. So there you go, Eagles fans. I got you at number 3. If you were mad at me, you can't be mad at me now. I got you right up there in the Super Bowl favorites. So there you go. My number 2 team, the Detroit Lions, at 12-2 are dropping out of that first place spot. Like I said, the number 2. They're only dropping 1. I don't want to overreact, but injuries have really caught up with this defense. And, it's a little hard not to get worried, right? Because it's sort of starting to look like, the beginning of what last year was. Or it's sort of starting to look like, 2 years ago where, their offense was pretty good, but their defense was pretty bad. But unless they suffer more injuries, I think these players who are filling in are actually going to make, the coaches are going to make the appropriate adjustments. They're going to start to get more comfortable. they versed two top 7 offenses, right, over the past 2 weeks as these injuries were piling up. So it's not as bad. This defense is not as bad as it seems. I mean, come on. They just played the Packers, who are hotter now than they've ever been, and the Bills, also hotter now than they've ever been. But I said, unless if they suffer more injuries on the defense, they didn't. But on offense, oh man, one of my favorite players in the league, David Montgomery, I believe is an MCL tear. He's out for the year. And now I have faith that they can find a backup, knuckles to their Sonic. But he's not going to be David Montgomery, that's for sure. And David Montgomery won them that Packers game. Well, you could argue it's their offensive line, right? But their ability to run the ball, to go for it with those gutsy calls, was coming from Montgomery. You're not giving it to Gibbs on 4th and 1. I mean, you could pitch it, but I'll just hand it off to Montgomery right up the middle and just trust the offensive line. So, this Lions team has got to finish strong in the end of the day. They would really like the 1 seed so that they can have a little bit more time to get healthy. They have Bears, 49ers, and Vikings, right? So that should be 2 wins and a potential loss, right? The Vikings played them real close last time. They're going to want that 1 seed too. So could be the battle for the 1 seed. Very important game right there. But in this game, they fell behind. They went 3 and out, and then they had a turnover, right? And the Bills went up 2 scores. And that was all she wrote. I mean, after that, both teams were scoring drive after drive after drive, but you're down, right? You're down 2 scores. That's the whole point of when you're down 2 scores, why it's so hard to come back. Sorry, I keep looking over there. You're done, right? Against this Bills team? No, because it's not like there's some passing offense, right? They can pass, but they're a run first team. And I'll say this too, just as a side note, onside kick with 10 minutes left, down only 10 points. I understand you don't think your defense could stop them, but I mean, I don't know. You really could argue it either way, but it just looks bad, right? I just wanted to point that out. It was a little bit bold, right? But I'm not Dan Campbell. He's the one who makes the bold calls, not me. So yeah, it was a tough loss for the Lions, but I think they'll be back on their feet by either the wild card round, or if they get that first round bye, they'll be back on their feet by the divisional round for sure. And then we're just going to talk about the Bills, my number 1 team, my new number 1 team. Finally, I had the Lions up there for weeks, but now I got the Bills 11-3, moving up 2 spots. Best possible response to last week. Best possible response. Best offense in football right now, very clearly. Back-to-back weeks with 40-plus points. Obviously, the defense has holes, but if you can force a 3 and out here and there, if you can get a turnover here and there, you can live with that because Allen can go ahead and score 40, right? And I guess, they did verse the Lions and, the Rams, who over the course of this year have had a little bit of a beat-up defense. But in the end of the day, this Bills team, I think you can tell it's not just like a systematic thing. Well, it is, but it's a Josh Allen thing too, right? I mean, what he's able to do, it truly is remarkable. Remarkable. I mean, like I said about Lamar, he's having an incredible season. Josh Allen's having just as great of a season. 3,400 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's a great ratio. But then on the ground, 500 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns on the ground. So that's a combination of 3,900 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So I don't know how many fumbles Lamar and Allen have right now, but I'm going to assume Lamar has a little bit more, and that their turnovers are about the same. I'm going to assume Lamar has 2 more fumbles than Josh Allen. But so Lamar has the lead in touchdowns by 1, and he's got the lead in yards by like 400. That he's probably not going to catch him. But yeah, it just seems like it's Josh Allen's time. But you know what? I'm a little worried. This Bills team over the years does this. I just feel like they don't normally do it this late in the season where they get really hot, but it's usually their defense, right? But right now it's the offense. It's the offense that's hot. And to me, that means now it's in the hands of Josh Allen. You're not going into a playoff game against Mahomes expecting to hold him to 25 points or 24 points. You're going to say, we're going to get into a shootout with Mahomes. So your game plan is going to be a little more in line with what your best player is. So I don't know. I guess there's, a ton of ways you could look at it. We'll talk about more when we get to playoffs. But yeah, that's going to be my list. Bills number 1, Chiefs down to 4. Big drop off for them with Mahomes getting injured. Rams continuing the climb after that impressive win against the Bills and then coming off a win they needed against the 49ers. Bucks, my biggest riser, moving up 6 spots actually to number 11. The Seahawks, with Geno Smith injured, dropped 4 spots. The 49ers dropped 3 as their season's just kind of falling apart. And then the rest of the list, there's not too much movement. So I just want to thank you all so much for watching. These videos take a lot of effort and time to prepare for and make, but you know what? It's all worth it for you guys because you guys love them so much. And you know what? I enjoy making them too. I love talking about all these teams. So if you did enjoy, please leave a like on the video and tell me in the comments, should the Bills not be the number 1 team? Should it still be the Lions? Or I know some of you are listening, should the Eagles be the number 1 team? Are they better than the Lions and the Bills? That remains to be seen. So, and subscribe if you aren't already. Stay tuned until the end of this week. I'm going to be coming out with a moneyline picks score predictions video, actually, either Thursday night or Friday night. If I don't post it Thursday night, you'll know because I'll have a Thursday night football post up on the Instagram at @the_pocket_NFL, predicting the score of that game. I'm currently tied for 4th. With my current count, I got to recount it. But I currently have 159, correct. So I'm doing really, really well so far this year. 68% accuracy. So that's all doing very well. And I hope you guys enjoy those videos too. And I'll have a Giants preview for the Falcons game. I thought it was going to be a little bit more interesting with Cousins, but I think with Penix in, might not be as optimistic, but we'll see. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. And don't forget to catch those videos later in the week. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.